Good afternoon. My name is Mary Metz, and I am a member of the UW-RA, the UW Retirement Association Committee on Challenges and Opportunities in Retirement. And that committee is sponsoring this afternoon's session. I'm also a resident of Oakwood Village here for the last year and a half. And it's my pleasure today to introduce Hilde Adler. Hilde has written this book, which some of you have seen, called I Am Not Old Enough: The 27 Stages of Adjustment to Living in a Retirement Community. Hilde and Jim Taylor and I will read from it. She will explain how that will be organized. The first thing that Hilde wants you to know about her is that she is not an expert in either aging or the running of retirement communities. She is a resident of Oakwood Village here and the author of this humorous account of how she got here. She lived for 46 years in Shorewood Hills, and together with her husband, scientist Julius Adler, they raised 2 children in that house. She was also a physical education teacher. That taught her to be tough, though I strongly suspect she might have been that already. And it taught her to talk so people will listen. After Hilde moved to Oakwood 6 years ago, her friends kept asking her about Oakwood and about the moving process. She decided it was easier to write down the process of moving than to keep telling them about it. The result was this little book. I will let her do the rest of the explaining. Our format today will be to read from the book for about an hour, then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back for questions about any part of the 27 stages. All 3 of us will take the questions, so let me introduce who the other 2 people up here are. Jim Taylor is a former professor of chemistry at UW, and he is expert in many things scientific. But he is not an expert in aging or retirement communities. He does live at Oakwood West, and like the other 2 of us, he does have both his own experience and that of his friends and acquaintances to draw on. I complete the portfolio of lack of expert knowledge of aging and retirement communities, but share the experiential knowledge of my colleagues. For what it was worth, in my life BRC, before retirement community, I was a sociologist of education. That said, Hilde, take it away.
All right. So I want to reiterate that I'm not an expert, and therefore I thank you intensely for coming to this. It made me nervous that the Retirement Association is sponsoring something without experts up here, but we're going to give it a good shot. So I want to explain to you about this book to begin with. It's written in 2 voices. Both of them are my voices. There is the real me, which is blathering, let it all hang out, say whatever you think. Just tell it the way it is. That's the blathering voice, and I'm going to read that voice because it's the easiest one for me to read. Then there is something that in the book is called reality check. Reality check is that inner voice that surfaces now and then, and you want to push it back in, that tells you how it really is while you're making all these statements about what you think it is. So Mary is reading that voice. And as we were getting ready for this, I would say to her now and then, "You sound completely obnoxious. I wish you would shut up." But she kept on going, and she wouldn't let me escape. So Jim is, in the book there are just 2 voices, but for this presentation we have 3. We just wanted to have Jim with us on the stage because he's such a wonderful presence. And he's going to read the stages. So we are calling him the stage manager for this production. I also want to be clear about something, that this is my story. It's not everybody's story, and I'm quite serious about that. Some people did not have the experience of the kind of neighborhood I did, that they really hated to leave. Some people had moved before and were, in one or two houses since their original house when they first raised their children, perhaps. And people are different in the way they adjust to the retirement community. Some people do it really quickly, and some people take longer. So this is mine, but I hope that you will be able to relate to some of this, what's in there at any rate. We are not reading the whole book. There is almost no stage that we're reading completely, because we don't have time to do that, and you wouldn't want to sit that long anyway. So we're going to, some stages, we're going to read all the names of the stages. Jim is going to read every one of them, but some of them we're going to skip the text altogether, and some of them we're going to shorten, but we'll let you know when we shorten them a lot, but just know that none of them are going to be read entirely. All right.
Stage 1. I'm not moving anywhere. I love my house, and I can handle it. I'm not going to live in an apartment.
Are you kidding me? I am absolutely not moving to a retirement community. I am not moving anywhere. I'm staying right here in this house. I love this house. Everybody loves it. This is where everybody always wants to be. I'm not leaving here. The children would never forgive me if we sold this house. It's a great house. It has an attic and a basement and even a screened porch. We spend spring, summer, and fall on that porch, eat almost every meal out there. There is no way I'm ever going to leave that screened porch. And the house is in really good condition. Yes, it's old, but the furnace is brand new. And those old-fashioned radiators provide the best kind of heat. Everybody knows that. The roof is brand new, too. We had the entire thing replaced after a hailstorm a few years ago did all kinds of damage to the shingles. And we have such terrific neighbors. We've been so lucky about those neighbors. They'd help in a heartbeat in the middle of the night if we needed them. They'd be shocked if we left. You don't find a lot of neighbors like that these days. A person would be crazy to give them up. Besides, it would be just too difficult to live in an apartment. It would make me feel claustrophobic. Think of everything I'd have to get rid of if we moved to an apartment. How could I possibly go through everything in the attic? What would I do with all this stuff I can't take along? The whole idea is too overwhelming. I just don't want to do it. I am not doing it. And I haven't even mentioned Julius. Yes, of course he's still madly in love with me after 55 years of marriage, but he does not want to move. He will not move. Never, 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 never. He's made it clear, if I move, I'll be doing it without him. He will not live in an old age home. Anyway, I'm perfectly able to do everything I've always done. There is simply no reason to move. I have no problem going down the basement stairs to throw in a load of laundry, so my knees hurt a little on the stairs. Who said life was perfect? Of course I can change my own light bulbs. It's so annoying when the kids yell at me to stop every time they see me climb up 3 steps on a ladder. There is not one thing wrong with my balance. And for those very few things that are getting a tiny little bit harder, like the snow or the grass or the leaves, all that heavy stuff, I can hire somebody. That's a lot cheaper than moving.
Well, everything you said is probably sort of true, but it's not completely true. Or the idea of living in a retirement community would not even have appeared on your radar screen. Why are you even talking about this? What about that annoying thought that surfaces every once in a while, suggesting that perhaps there's the tiniest possibility that you can't keep up this pace forever? That a day may come when maintaining this house and yard will become a bit much. And about the neighbors, wasn't Phil across the street ruminating recently about retiring and moving to Florida? He couldn't have been serious. Obviously, he's much too young. Anyway, time marches on.
I don't want to talk about this anymore. I am not moving. Full stop, period.
Stage 2. I'm not old enough.
Of course I'm not old enough. How I can be old enough to live in a retirement community? That's for old people, not me. My mother lived in a retirement community. I am not old. I'm not young exactly, but I'm absolutely not old. I'm busy every single minute of the day. There are not enough hours in 50 years for me to do everything I still want to do. I am definitely too young to live in a retirement community.
Would you please step off your cloud? Has your memory started to fail? Do you really not remember how old you were on your last birthday? What do you imagine the average age is in one of these places? But be that as it may, if you ever should decide to move, just be sure you do it during the right window of time. If you had moved too soon, a non-issue, obviously, it definitely would have not have felt right. You might have wondered, what am I doing here? A little too often. But too late is almost worse. If you wait till you have an emergency or for some other reason want to move immediately, your apartment choices will likely be very limited, if anything's even available. Plus, the longer you wait and the older you get, the bigger a deal everything becomes. Decisions, stairs, adjusting to a new place, making new friends, participating in new activities, learning new stuff, figuring out how everything works in the new community, all become more difficult. And waiting too long definitely makes it harder to take advantage of everything a retirement community has to offer.
I am not interested in making a single new friend. I have enough friends already. I am not interested in participating in a single new activity. I am not the least bit interested in my perfect window of time. I know exactly how old I was on my last birthday. I am not old enough to move into one of these places.
Stage 3. I don't want to live with all those old people.
I like to live in the middle of all the different ages, the way it's always been, the way it's supposed to be. I want to hear and see the kids outside. I wish they'd slow down their bikes a little when they see people walking toward them. Sometimes I think they're determined to kill me. I even like to hear the dogs, except for the one that never stops barking. Why don't they ever let him in? We always had a dog till the last one died. We had her for 15 years. It was so sad. I'm not even the oldest person on the block. Gertrude on the corner is 96 and still lives in her house all by herself, and she's doing fine. She has 5 children in town who hover about, and maybe that helps, but still. Everybody's part of the gang on our block. Everybody comes to the block party on Labor Day. I don't want to live where it's quiet. I don't want to live where everybody's old and not a single person is young, and where everybody has white hair.
You may not be quite as old as Gertrude, but let's get real. You joined the AARP many, many, many years ago. Your hair hasn't been jet black for a long time. And you do not have 5 children living in town who hover. Also, please stop all this romantic exaggeration about the block. It's just a bunch of houses on a street, for pity's sake.
Stage 4. So maybe I'm as old as some of these people, but I look younger. And stage 5, I certainly act younger.
I'm not the kind of person who thinks she's better than other people. Really, I'm not. I am not a snob. Not in the slightest. Nobody's ever called me a snob. I am the epitome of not a snob. But this is different. My situation is definitely different. I simply don't look old, and I don't act old, and I don't dress old, and I don't feel old. The people in the retirement community can't possibly feel the way I do.
Have you looked in the mirror lately? Do it. Try to be objective. Or ask somebody to take a close-up picture of you and then study it. Better still, take a selfie. It doesn't exactly shock me that you're saying all this stuff. That's because just about every single person who moves into any retirement community thinks and says exactly the same thing. Everybody is convinced that he or she looks and acts younger than anybody else in the place. Everybody's sure that he or she is doing more interesting things, thinking more interesting thoughts, and altogether living a more vibrant life than any other person there. And stop being so ageist. Ageist is very closely related to snob, which you claim you are not. Stop thinking about the retirement community residents only as old people. Think about them as people. Many residents in a retirement community have led interesting lives, very possibly more interesting than yours, which might come as a shock. And many continue to be totally engaged with the world. They will share all sorts of interests with you, and many are people you'd love to know. Wrap your head around this concept. The whole scenario of how you look and act in comparison to everybody else becomes a lesson in humility. Trust me on this.
Stage 6. This is really a nice apartment. I hope the person ahead of me on the list doesn't take it.
Because I am, after all, open-minded, flexible, forward-looking, realistic, and not at all set in my ways, I have reluctantly decided, okay, I'm willing to look at just one apartment. Only looking. Of course I'm fussy. Has to be sunny, the right view, large enough, quite perfect really, or I won't even be remotely interested. Don't get me wrong. I have in no way decided to move. Not at all. But I've activated us on the waiting list.
Just be aware that not everybody on the waiting list feels like you. Many people would be so happy to get into the community, they'd be ecstatic with any apartment. Some have had some sort of medical or other emergencies, and they don't want to stay in their house one more day. Others have simply decided that it's time to live in place with more support. Still others want to move in early because they don't want to move twice. The scenarios are endless. Keep all that in mind while you're being so fussy. I have to admit, you had an intelligent moment many years ago when you put your name on that waiting list and gave the place a deposit way before you were ready to move anywhere. That was a good decision on your part. If you hadn't done that, they wouldn't be showing you any apartments so soon after you activated.
Well, they've been showing me apartments, and of course I've been rejecting them. Fortunately, there was something wrong with every one of them. It makes me really happy to reject an apartment. I'm always incredibly relieved after I've rejected an apartment. I don't want to move. Then one day I get another call and trudge over yet again to check out yet another apartment I know I won't like. And to my horror, I like it. For one reason or another, in my secret heart, I can imagine myself living in this apartment. To add to my overall misery, it occurs to me that even though I have so not decided to move to this retirement community, if I don't take this apartment, they may never show me another one I like as much. This is definitely an unexpected dilemma of gigantic proportions. Katrina, the marketing representative, tells me that one other person ahead of us on the waiting list is also looking at this apartment, but if he rejects it, it's ours. Out of the blue, I suddenly, desperately would like to move into this apartment. How long does this person have to decide? A week? That's a long time. So I wait and I worry. Eventually, Katrina calls and cheerily tells me if we still want the apartments, it's ours. In sudden shock, I tell her that Julius, who has somehow taken to liking the woods behind the place and who completely stopped sulking when he met a colleague from work in the hall when I dragged him with me to look at an apartment, and I and our children and 67 of our closest friends would like to look at this apartment again. How long do we have to decide? When the time is up, I reluctantly whisper, "We'll take it." Julius mumbles that he'll come.
Congratulations.
Stage 7. What am I doing in this apartment? This was a terrible mistake. I'm giving it back.
In what moment of complete insanity did I decide to take this apartment? How could I do such a thing? Was I crazy? I'm not ready to move to a retirement community. So what if this is an amazingly excellent apartment? I'm not ready. I never decided to do this. Were they pressuring me when they said you have a week to decide, and then we'll have to offer the apartment to the next people on the list? They did say that. Was that when some strange voice inside me surfaced and declared, I don't want the next people on the list to move into my apartment? Did I make an emotional, spur-of-the-moment, completely ridiculous decision? There'll be other apartments. I'm going to give this one back. I never meant to take it. This is all happening too fast. They'll take it back. The waiting list is really long. Somebody else will grab that apartment in a minute. That, of course, is the problem. I don't want anybody else to grab my apartment. What is it about that apartment that gives it such a special vibe? I can actually imagine myself living in this apartment. I don't know what to do. Maybe we should keep it. What if they never show us another apartment that we like this much? Strange. But since he grudgingly agreed to the deposit on it, there hasn't been a word of complaint from Julius. What's wrong with him?
This is a big moment. Call the neighbors and have a party.
Stage 8. I can't believe I did this.
We've moved. We're in. I'm so glad the move is behind me. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of work, but I did it. And I did it quite well, even if I do say so myself. I know now all the tricks about downsizing, what to do with stuff, whom to hire to help. Actually, I've become such an expert at downsizing and moving that it has occurred to me to start a service business to help other seniors move. Good idea. Once we signed the contract, people from the retirement community worked with us to make the apartment look even better. We got to choose new paint, light fixtures, floors, everything. We got brand new appliances. I started to measure. I measured all the walls in the new apartment, and then I measured them again. I figured out exactly where all the furniture would go and where I was going to put things. On moving day, in 3 hours, our whole house was in a truck. It took even less time to move the furniture out of the truck and into the new apartment. It's amazing how good all the stuff from the house looks in the apartment. The place actually reminds me a little of our house. I was very careful not to clutter. Less is more. When I establish my senior moving service, one of the first things I'll tell my clients is to get rid of stuff, never to clutter. Who would have thought? Julia seems almost cheerful. The sun streams through the windows in the afternoon. It's time to invite all the old neighbors to see the place. I think they'll be amazed. Maybe they'll put themselves on the waiting list.
Stage 9. I miss everything. I miss the bird feeder. I miss the sun and the rain and the fog at the front door. I miss walking around my block. I miss my quiet dishwasher. I miss the white pine. I miss the annoying chipmunk that was so determined to live in the downspout. I miss my friends. I miss the whole neighborhood. I miss the comfort of being where I belong.
We're going to skip the whole text on that stage.
Stage 10. They have endless social events here. I'm never going to any of them. I'm not social.
I am so totally not interested in any of the social stuff happening in this retirement community. It's not that I'm a recluse or anything. I like people, actually. But I have absolutely no interest in being social in this place. None. I'm never going to get to know these people. I could care less. It's just too much trouble to get to know all these new people who know nothing whatsoever about me, or the cool things I've done, or anything else about my history for that matter. They don't know and they don't care. I'm not even going to try. It takes too much energy. This is not middle school. I'm simply going to live my life. I don't need or want a single new friend. I have enough friends already. Anyway, as I mentioned, all these people are old. Truth be told, I love a good conversation with friends at the kitchen table or in the coffee shop, but I'm abominably, embarrassingly bad at making conversation. I have never been able to meet people through activities that are organized primarily so that people can meet each other, like coffee hours or mixers. Some people thrive on those, but I don't. They terrify me, to be honest. I'm immensely attracted to the idea of remaining locked in my apartment for at least the next 7 years without ever leaving it at all.
Will you please just stop making pronouncements, excuse me, about everything you're never going to do? You get involved because you're not going to be able to resist all the interesting activities that will pull you in to participate. You know you hate to miss a good time. You don't have to go to social hours. Sorry to disappoint you, but if you don't show up at those, nobody will mind and nobody will care, and absolutely nobody will miss you. Chances are nobody will even notice because you have not yet appeared on anybody's radar screen. Stop already with these illusions of importance. Some people sweep fairly easily into the social life in a retirement community. Others are a bit intimidated, and some are terrified. It's hard to generalize about social life. The truth is there are going to be people in the new place who really do care to get to know you, who are interested in you and in your life, BRC, before retirement community, and who are willing to show you the ropes and eager to do things with you. So, relax.
Stage 11. I will never eat in the dining room.
This is closely related to number 10. And how that works depends a little on your outlook in life, but more on how the eating scenario in your particular place is organized. First, about the food. In some retirement communities, the food is totally delicious. In others, it's not. Life is unfair that way. Some places serve 3 meals a day, some serve only dinner. In some, you're expected to eat all meals in a dining room. Others provide a takeout option where you can pick up the food and eat it in your apartment. For a small fee, they may even deliver it to your apartment. The takeout option allows a way out if you are philosophically not crazy about the concept of eating in a restaurant every night for the rest of your life. Many places have a food allowance, which means that a certain monthly fee is charged for food whether you eat it or not. In addition to all this, almost all independent living units do have kitchens. Do you still want to cook? Or never again, not on your life? That's the food part. Then there's the social part, again. In some places, a hostess simply seats you with somebody when you come to the dining room. This is sometimes a good way to meet new people, and occasionally it's a disaster. In others, residents make their own dinner dates. Some people eat with the same crowd every night, and others like to mix it up. Some residents always prefer to eat by themselves with a good book. It takes time to figure out all of it.
I am beyond attracted to the takeout option. I intend to eat with Julius and the NewsHour, and occasionally have a conversation with Julius if he should happen to be in a talkative mood. I am never eating in the dining room.
Stage 12. People are really nice. I don't have one thing in common with any of these people.
I love theater, and I'm pretty good on the computer for somebody my age. I hate to cook, have always hated it. Baking is even worse. I love folk songs, Joan Baez, Pete Seeger, all that. I recycle. I like to wear extremely comfortable clothes and sandals or sneakers and wear real shoes only when there is no escape. I like to sing the Star-Spangled Banner, and I tend to be opinionated about people who run for public office. Penelope across the hall doesn't even do email, which drives me crazy. I'm going to have to teach her some computer skills. She grew up on some farm in North Dakota. She's a weaver. I have to admit, she makes absolutely gorgeous Navajo-style rugs. And she bakes all the time. She says it relaxes her. She makes lemon bars to die for, and she shares them. She has her hair done every single Friday morning, and she always looks put together. She wears real shoes all the time. She and I have absolutely not one thing in common. But I like her. She's been super supportive and welcoming. And she has a great sense of humor. I think Sanford, who lives in the apartment next to mine, is a famous nuclear physicist of some sort. He seems obsessed with whooping cranes and Mahler symphonies. He's really nice. Elizabeth and Eric next door to him are also nice. They're crazed about playing bridge, and they play at Constantine and seem to win a lot. Max and Darlene at the very end of the hall have 8 grandchildren and 15 great-grandchildren, and they're always either talking about them or having in their apartment for sleepovers. I have 1 grandson. This is not an even playing field. I get along just fine with all these people. I wouldn't dare bring up politics with any of them.
These are your new neighbors, and the floor is your new neighborhood. Neighborhoods are diverse. Everybody knows that, and we're supposed to like it that way. Peace and goodwill in a neighborhood are extremely important. I think you learned this or something like it in Sunday school.
Stage 13. I'm never going to take the bus.
We're going to skip almost all this text. I want nothing to do with this bus. We have a car and I can drive myself any place I want to go.
Are you ever going to stop saying, I am never? It's annoying.
Stage 14. Somebody wants to have breakfast with me in the dining room. I'll do it just this once. I don't want to be rude.
We're going to skip this whole chapter, this whole stage.
Stage 15. I had a great time.
We're going to skip that too.
Stage 16. I think last fall was the first time I've ever really enjoyed the fall colors, because I knew I wouldn't have to rake about 5 million leaves.
Remember how totally, incredibly gorgeous the colors were this past fall? The maples all looked like paintings. They were spectacular. The autumn colors around here have not been this beautiful in 50 years. I'm almost ashamed to admit it, but this past fall, I actually gloated when I drove around town and saw lawns covered with leaves. I smiled benignly, hidden from view in my car, of course, at all the exhausted-looking rakers. I toasted the fact that I will never again have to think about leaves or mulch or even the creeping Charlie which is taking over the lawn. Never in my life. While I was at it, I toasted no longer having to worry about the basement flooding during a bad rainstorm, never again having to deal with a chipmunk in the dryer motor. Squirrels hissing at me from the inside of the garage are a thing of the past. When the toilet overflows, I will call maintenance, and somebody will come and fix it. I will never again freeze almost to death while using my hair dryer to open the garage door which has frozen to the cement. Somebody will make sure the hot water gets turned back on immediately if it should ever go off. And should I decide to go off on a trip, which I hope to do now and then, the shades can stay up, the lamps will not need timers. I will simply lock the door and leave, and they will do whatever it is they do about the mail and the paper. I've been liberated. Cheers. The fall colors were totally magnificent this year.
Stage 17. I'm going to be in a play. I got a great part.
We're going to skip that, except for the obnoxious voice over there.
I hope you realize this conversation is not really about plays or games. It's about participating. Participating is the secret to feeling that you belong, that you're really a member of the community.
Stage 18. What in the world am I doing here?
This is a really nice hotel, and I've had a wonderful time here. But I want to go home now.
Stage 19. There are no bats in the retirement center.
We're going to skip most of this text. This is about more than bats. Bats are just symbolic. It's about all the things that happen in a house that I no longer have to worry about in the retirement community.
I think you're beginning to see a glimmer of light.
Stage 20. I took the bus.
We had tickets to the symphony, and it was going to be a particularly excellent concert with a huge choir, which I love, and they were predicting a particularly horrible snowstorm. So at the very last minute, before they removed the sign-up sheet, I signed up for the bus. We waited in the lobby and got on the bus with all the other people. The bus was warm and cozy. It felt like an ordinary bus. No worries about sliding around at every slippery stoplight, no long walk on icy patches, no freezing. It was fabulous. Why did it take me so long to discover this bus? This bus has been here. Why have I not been using it? Sometimes I think I'm a slow learner. I totally love this bus. Next month I'm going to sign up early to be sure there's space for us. Why would anyone want to drive in the winter if they can take this bus?
You are a slow learner, but keep it up. There may be hope for you.
Stage 21. Some of these people have led amazingly interesting lives.
I've been meeting a lot of people since moving to this retirement community, but let's face it, we're not exactly meeting each other during the prime of our lives. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but even I can recognize that all of us, including me, who live in these places, are likely to be ever so slightly over the top of the hill. Let's get real. There's a chance that we don't exactly look or act the way we did when we were 20 or 30 or even 45. So it's been eye-opening to talk with some of these new people and find out what they really did once upon a time. At this point, they don't necessarily resemble my imaginary version of the dean of the business school at the university, or a sex therapist, or a sheriff, or the singing star in any number of local theater productions. I didn't realize at first that I was living on the same floor with a medieval historian, a transplant surgeon, a nurse who helped deliver over 300 babies, an expert at rewiring old houses, or the man who raised the #1 prize-winning cow, I forgot what kind, in the whole county. Somebody on my floor invented a new kind of apple. Go figure. Of course, there are also ordinary people who just sort of lived their lives, like me.
When you were little, your mother taught you something along the lines of, don't judge a book by its cover. Most of her advice will probably work in the retirement community. And keep finding out stuff about the neighbors. If you're lucky, they might even get interested in you.
Stage 22. I had a great conversation in the dining room last night.
I've been eating in the dining room now and then, even though I swear I'd never do this. I don't know how this happened. Why don't I ever stick to my resolutions? My neighbor Penelope lured Julius and me into having dinner with her in the dining room. It turned out to be quite okay. The server took our order, and I didn't have to do anything but sit there. We talked about all the things people talk about: the British royal family, climate change, a movie we've all seen and liked, the Galapagos, restaurants in town, the Green Bay Packers, where we lived, BRC, the children, books, and about life here in the retirement community, including the quality of the food. I ended up with a lot of good information. We stayed away from politics, gun laws, and immigration. It was all good. I can't believe I'm saying this. I still don't want to eat in a restaurant every single night for the rest of my life, and I remain addicted to the news hour. But I guess dinner with friends in the dining room is okay once in a while. Sitting there and having a server take your order isn't all bad. And it really is a good way to meet some other residents. Some people do it all the time, and they somehow seem to survive.
Stage 23. I joined the activities committee. We're planning some terrific programs.
At our place, we have committees for everything. I joined the activities committee. On our committee, we plan events and carry them out with the help of our staff person. For example, we had a resident art show. Another time, we invited members of our writing group to read some of their original work. We tried a version of speed meeting to introduce residents to others they didn't know. We bring in speakers on subjects we think will interest people. We organized a comedy hour, and it actually worked. We had people submit photos of themselves as children and had everybody try to identify everybody else. Our activities are designed to involve as many people as possible and to try to build community. That's the whole idea.
It's great that you joined a committee. As you noted, this is not for everybody, but you seem to like that sort of thing. You're lucky that they had a place for you. It certainly is a way to become part of the scene. If you ever feel like you've had enough committee, stop. Remember, it's your life and you're, yes, old. You can do what you want.
Stage 24. My right knee hurts. I'm glad there's an elevator.
My right knee's been hurting for a while now. Actually, it's been hurting for about 20 years. But it hasn't been hurting enough to demand an enormous amount of my attention until recently. It's not awful, I'm not limping, and I don't need a walker or a cane or anything, but it just hurts sometimes, especially when I go up and down the stairs. I confessed this knee situation to my doctor, and he, though usually annoyingly avid in the promotion of exercise, suggested I walk up and down as few stairs as possible and take an elevator whenever I can. He thought it wasn't helping my knee to put weight on it. So since I'm not particularly interested in replacing the entire thing, I always use the elevator now. There are other perks about the elevator. One, it beats slogging the groceries up the stairs. Two, the elevator is a wonderful place to meet people. Since one is virtually imprisoned with others during a ride on an elevator, and especially whoever is the button pusher has to ask what floors the others live on, one might as well find out who they are, when they moved in, where they came from, and as much other information as possible. And three, the elevator is also an excellent venue for short discussions. The weather is always a good topic. For people who've just been to a program together, a ride in the elevator is just enough time to evaluate. It's certainly enough to determine if the program was good, or pretty good, or horrible. Now and then, I even ask my elevator mates to come to our place and discuss things further over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. As I mentioned, I've made some friends in the elevator. I'm very happy to finally live in a place with an elevator.
Stage 25. They're predicting 6 to 10 inches of snow. I don't care. We have a heated garage.
We're going to skip most of this text.
Stage 26.
Wait a minute, we're going to
Okay.
say one little bit of it.
Okay?
If I had to name only one reason why I'm glad to be in this retirement community, it would without any doubt be the heated garage. I drive into the garage with my car covered with snow and ice, dripping slush, and an hour later, the next morning, the car is sitting serenely in its assigned stall. Everything has melted. All this miserable stuff has disappeared. When we lived in the house, which had an eternally icy garage, and it was detached, which I admit is unusually old-fashioned, and certainly not everybody's situation. The snow and ice stayed on my car until spring. And groceries, now I wheel them to my apartment in a cart. No more stepping gingerly over this and that ice patch, trying to balance bags of groceries.
Stage 26. One of my old neighbors invited me for coffee. I miss my old neighborhood and my people.
Of course I keep up with the old neighbors. They're my friends and I love them. I miss them. And they love me and miss me too, at least they've said that. So when one or another of them invites me for coffee or tea or supper or just to talk, I can't wait to go. And I'm beyond excited to be back in the old neighborhood. That's never going to change. But the thing that has changed over time, maybe 6 months or a year or maybe even 2 or 3 years later, is that although I'm as excited and happy as ever to be back in the neighborhood, I'm okay with going home at the end of the visit. Over time, home has moved from where I was then to where I am now. This change was so subtle that I didn't even realize it was happening. But there was a moment when I knew it had happened. My golden friends and that house and the tall pine in the front yard, I will love those forever.
Stage 27. I think I'm very glad I moved here.
Are you really?
Yes, I really am.
All right, we'll take a 10-minute break and come back, and you can ask any questions that you want.
And we don't know if we can answer them or not.
What sort of arrangements can you make if you haven't sold your house and don't have the money for the house before you have to pay for the apartment?
That varies with different places. We have friends who went into a retirement community outside Milwaukee where the retirement community gave them financing for a year. At Oakwood, the deal is cash on the barrelhead, get it any way you want. Banks have something, informally it's called a bridge loan. They don't call it a bridge loan, but you can take either a second mortgage on your house or take an equity line of credit on your house. And so you're borrowing against your house until it sells. And we did that. We only had it for a few months.
You mean you took an equity line of credit?
Yes, on our house.
How did you do that? Did you go to a bank or what?
Yes, we went to a bank. We have an account at the credit union, and we went to the credit union.
You went to the credit union?
Yeah, but we could have gone to any number of banks.
I see.
Did you have your house on the market while this was going on?
No, you need to get it, you need to get that loan before you officially put your house on the market.
Yeah. If you put your house on the market, you can't get a home equity loan. So we didn't know that. And that's an important thing to know. So if you think you're going to do this, get the loan sooner, because once your house is on the market, the banks won't give you that. So you have to get a loan any way you can. But it's at Oakwood, at least, it's up to you.
So you have to get your loan first and then decide.
Then put the house on the market.
And then put the house on the market.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
And with an equity loan, you don't have to pay until you actually take the money. So we had the line of credit, but we didn't have to start paying interest until we actually needed the money, which was helpful.
Yeah.
I found your book very insightful. It was almost as if you had read my mind. How long did it take you to write it, and did you get it reviewed from friends or others in the process?
I wrote the stages without any, just the stages, after I'd been here for about 2 years, because by that time I had decided I really liked it. And then another year later, I had this experience of all these people with these basset hound looking faces asking me what's it like to live over there. And I finally decided I'm going to explain what it's like to live over there. And that, actually writing it took about 3 months, because it was also obvious to me, because it's what everybody thinks.
I think one of the things that I found the most difficult is coming into the dining room and not having anyone that I knew sitting at a table where I could join them. Now, the dining room people will seat you somewhere, and it may be an enjoyable experience, and it may not. If it's an enjoyable one, the next time you have another person that you know in the dining room. But after a while, you look out in the dining room and you know 20 or 25 people, and they will say, come on over to our table, if you behave.
What other retirement communities did you look at before Oakwood? But I don't understand, do you own your apartment here at Oakwood, or do you pay them rent or whatever for the
It's called
apartment?
a life lease, which means you have to pay for it, but it's on loan. And at least when we moved in, your estate, if you move out, or your estate gets 90% of it back, 90% of whatever you paid, as soon as they sell it to the next people. But, so it's kind of a mix of owning it and not owning it at the same time. That's the way it works at Oakwood, but different places work differently.
But since you are not paying real estate taxes, property taxes, or anything like that, you're not paying for the snow removal and all of the services that's provided, there is a fee each month. And for Oakwood, currently, there is a $230 a month fee for food at the restaurants. And if you use it, that's fine. If you don't use it, you lose it. So it encourages you to be part of the social structure of the organization by eating in the restaurants, however many meals a day you want to use.
But one thing about that food allowance, you can use that food allowance by eating all your dinners there, or they serve all 3 meals, but you choose what you want to eat. And they have at Oakwood, they have 2 different venues. At Cap Lakes, they do 2. I know that for sure. But if you wanted to have one big party and have it catered and invite 20 people, you can use your food allowance that way. Or any kind of catering. There are many different ways that you can use the food allowance. You can also buy stuff, like they have our smaller venue, which is called the Bistro, for example, serves pizza. So you can, at the end of the month, if we haven't used our food allowance, I buy a few pieces for my kids who like to have them. So you can use it any way that you want to use it up. But as Jim said, if you don't use it up, you lose it.
Do all the apartments have a kitchen, dining room, bedrooms, one bedroom, two bedrooms?
All the apartments have kitchens, and some have one bedroom, some have two bedrooms. None have three bedrooms, but some of them have two bedrooms or one bedroom plus a den. A den is another little room, and in most cases it does not have windows. So the bedrooms do, but the den does not. So there are very many different floor plans. When you get to that, you take a look at them and you have to decide which ones you are interested in taking.
Do you have to sign up for a certain type of floor plan before you? No.
Can I return to the fee for eating, or the $230 a month? Question is, many people older like to go south in the winter, and they may be gone for many months and so forth.
Yes.
They still pay that fee, or is there something they can bequeath it to somebody else, or I don't know, is there some other option while they're not here?
The way they do it now is if you're gone for 14 days or more in a month, they only charge you what would be the cost of the, or they will credit you what would be the cost of the food, but they don't credit you the part of the food that is the servers and washing the dishes and doing the cooking. So you get a partial refund for the food for those 14 days. Also, you can tell the desk that you would like to gift back whatever you don't use. And there are people who just like to cook. They don't want to be in the dining room very much. And so you can gift that back, and then that money will be used for food in the dining room for people who are low income. So there's a little transfer there. Otherwise, it just goes back into the general fund, but you can donate it in that way. And I think something like that, it used to be here that you got, if you were gone for 14 days, you got a half reduction. And I think different retirement communities do it slightly differently.
That's what I paid. I was gone for 2 months in the summer, but if the 14 days are from the middle of July to the middle of August, that's not 14 whole days per month, but then you got charged half the price.
Yeah.
But what Mary said is new change. It's a change in the policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to be away 12 days in November. No refund. There's a hand down here.
Does the place where your car gets parked in the garage vary with your apartment numbers, the floor you're living on? How does that work out?
You're just assigned a space depending on your apartment number. Each apartment has a number, and it's preceded by your floor. If you live on the second floor, your apartment would be 2 something, 220, 201, 2 whatever. And the spaces in the garage are just marked according to apartments, and you're just assigned a spot. If you have a special need, they might assign you a closest spot to the elevator, though. Does that answer you? Was that the question?
Understanding what you said, are you saying that if you're in a second floor apartment, then you're
assigned
in a certain floor in the garage?
Although there's only one floor in the garage. All the residents park on the same level. In one of the buildings, it's not quite big enough. There are only 2 garages. Most residents park on the same level. If you have 2 cars, then you can rent a space on the second level as well.
On which level?
The lowest level is resident parking.
Oh,
The second level is visitor parking, but there are also spaces there that are rented to residents who have 2 cars.
oh, I see.
Does that,
Well, yeah, one thing that concerns me is that during the time when there was a flood in this area, then people who lived, who had their cars in the lower level of
of the
the
Oaks.
garage,
Yeah.
their cars got flooded and ruined, you know, and I was just wondering about that.
Well, they've tried to help to build some berms so that that doesn't happen again. And since that time, there's been no problem. But yeah, that did happen.
Okay.
But that whole garage is used by residents anyway,
Okay,
because
thank
there is no other space.
A comment, in addition to the garage space, you also get a storage locker, which is quite adequate for most people.
Yes, yes, you do, and that's assigned as well.
I had 4 tool sets when I came here, and I still have 4 tool sets, and that storage locker is just great.
Yeah, and I put I use it in part like a pantry. So I'll put extra bottles of juice or soda or whatever in there. I'm in and out of that locker about once a week.
Hilde was talking about the junk when you come into the garage and it's snowy in winter and so on. But the garage also has a wash stall where you can bring your car in and hose it down with hot water to really melt off everything that's on there.
Many grocery stores now have delivery service, so if you can't get out or you choose not to get out, they will deliver. Do they do that at Oakwood? I mean,
There are people who use those services, yes. They bring it here. There's also a shopping bus that goes, I think, 3 times a week to different stores around town. Almost any store you might want to go to for groceries would be on that list. And people who don't drive anymore take that bus, and it works really well. They stop, they let you out, and then after a while they come back and get you.
Yeah, we also have a small grocery store that has milk and cereal and fruit. It has sort of the fundamentals. You can put together, and if you say, I don't have anything for supper, you can go get it at the grocery store.
There's a monthly charge for meals. What other monthly charges are there, if any? Do you have cable included or phone, or is there a monthly maintenance fee? Like, what does one expect or budget for other than the monthly food allowance?
Well, there's a fee, there's the monthly fee that depends on the size of your apartment. And other than that, there's a fee if you rent a second stall in a garage. That's $50 a month. There's a $4 fee when you sign up for the bus. That's the cost of the bus. If you take the bus to the symphony or any place, not on the shopping trips, but to some event, there's usually a $4 fee for the bus. But otherwise, as far as I can think, everything's covered. Is that correct?
There's also an elected charge if you want to have an emergency necklace or wrist bracelet in case of emergency. There is a fee for that each month.
Yeah, I think it's free when you use it only in your apartment, but if you want to upgrade and use it outside your apartment, there's a fee for it.
No.
No?
When we were going to move here, they gave us, and I think they're still doing that, a list of things like pay for your heat, pay for your water, all these various things that you pay. And most of those things are included. And you can look at that chart and say, okay, these things are costing me this much. And over here, that's included in this fee. So you can compare. And it changes, of course, as the prices change. But that way, when you're ready to go, when you want to sign up, they'll give you that chart to figure it out, and you can see what you're paying. It pretty much evens out, we found, yeah.
Yeah, I think most people find it's about the same as being in their house. There's utilities and cable and phone are in that fee, although there are upgrades that you may want to have. But they do give you a worksheet that's very helpful, and you can see how much that you're spending now, how much of that will be covered by your overall fee.
I would like to just make a comment. One of the things that the UW-Madison Retirement Association did was a comparison of the retirement communities within the Madison area. We presented two programs. The first one dealt with the communities offering 4 levels of care. So from independent living to memory care. The following year, we looked at those communities that offered 3 of those 4 levels. Those presentations, the materials are on the website. If you go to uwramadison.org. The first one was in March of 2018, and the next one was, isn't that right? It was in 19, I want to say January of 19. So you can go out and take a look. The handouts are there. It will provide you with information about their levels, their costs. Granted, it was a moment in time, so they're not totally accurate now, but we'll answer many of the questions that have been circulating around the audience.
Well, thank you all for coming.